Today's presentation is driving with Google Maps. Since retiring 11 years ago, I have driven across Canada and the United States many times and logged over 500,000 kilometers in my 2007 GMC truck. I've never had an accident or a speeding ticket despite driving in some very challenging conditions. I attribute my driving record to careful planning and the navigation systems that guide me on the ever-increasing complex roadways. I started 20 years ago with my trusted Garmin, then tried OnStar in my new 2007 truck. I also ordered it with GM's proprietary in-dash navigation system, which I used as a backup for my Garmin. Today things are different, and I use Google Maps as my primary navigation aid, but always have my wife with her road atlas as backup. Today I want to talk about the technology of navigation systems and what the future holds as we move into another era of autonomous driving cars. Google Maps is really the glue that integrates many Google services. This presentation is going to focus on the practical use of using Google Maps in a vehicle as a navigation aid. So, since the early beginnings of time, man has always wanted to explore. But where to go? What route should I take? And did they have maps? Well, this is a Babylonian map from the 6th century of BC. This is our earliest recording of a physical map that mankind had. And of course, it's made of rock. So even back then, people wanted to know how to go to different places. This is a copy of a 4th century AD map of a roadwork network of Roman Empire. It's the Romans built many roads throughout Europe, but it's interesting to note on this map that it's actually in color, and you'll see the roadways as you look along here, and it's a rudimentary type of map, but it is in color. This is a more complicated map. This is a current map of London, and note the waterways, parks, road colors that outline this very complicated cities. So maps have gotten more complicated as we moved along in life. Now this is a Boeing 787 Dreamliner. This is a long-haul, medium-sized, wide-body twin-engine jet that travels all over the world. It has no maps, no charts, no approach plates. All of them are all in the computer system. This is the bridge deck of a modern cruise ship, one that we were recently on, and there are no charts. There are no charts on these large cruise ships. In fact, I spoke to many captains. We spent a lot of time on cruise ships, and I've spoken to many captains, and there are no charts. It's all electronic. So this is a freeway in Los Angeles. Now, if you had no local knowledge, this would be a very formidable task to try and drive this freeway. In fact, I can tell you that there's one such freeway as this near Dallas. We arrived at our RV park, and shortly after I was walking around and spoke to, there was a man and wife there who had a new fifth wheel and truck, and it was for sale, and they were from Ontario, and they were down here in Dallas. And I said, well, what's going on? They tried to navigate this freeway, got so stressed out about it, put their unit up for sale, and were flying home. So this can be a very, very scary situation. So how are we going to navigate this? Well, if you look at the bottom left-hand corner of the screen, you'll see you could try using a compass. A compass was invented more than 2,000 years ago, and the first compasses were made of lodestone. And this is a naturally occurring magnetized stone of iron used in the Chinese dynasty. So you could try using a compass. As I said, my wife has her trusty road atlas on her lap. We could use Google Maps. We can use OnStar or Garmin. So there are many choices that we can use when we're traveling. Now, we started with a paper road atlas many years ago and then moved to a digital version as used in the Garmin device. Google Maps was then created and used an electronic version that was streamed from the cloud. But as we move forward with the next generation of driving technology, autonomous driving vehicles will play a major role in our transportation needs. To allow the guidance of these vehicles to be controlled by the internet would be foolhardy and pose a huge security risk. Hacking by foreign governments could bring the entire country's transportation system to a complete stop. So it is most likely that we will be looking at some other system in the future. And right now they're exploring HD maps, which are three-dimensional maps. There's also a new technology that's available, which is ground penetrating radar. This is cheap. It can be installed on cars for under $200. Now, to follow through with this, many of you have listened to Leo Laporte. He has a popular podcast radio show, and on it, he had a gentleman called Sam Abul-Samid, who is the principal researcher with Navigant Research. And I wanted to play a little clip about Sam's thoughts about this for the future. Just have a listen to this.
Last week we talked about GPS spoofing and the problems with localization with GPS, and one of the areas that potentially causes a problem with is going forward with autonomous vehicles. The vehicles need to know where they are on the road, even if the sensors can't necessarily see the road directly, like if you're driving in snow and things like that. You want to have precise location of where the vehicle is on the road. And if you've got a system like GPS that may not necessarily always be totally accurate as far as your position, you need something more precise. And so that's one of the things that engineers have been coming up with, is this idea of HD maps. So that, with talk about GPS, you're using the position of the satellites to triangulate your location anywhere on the planet. But with HD maps, what you're actually doing is you're doing the same kind of triangulation, except you're doing it from maps. If you have maps that have more than just the street level information, but actually have various the features, static features, things like overpasses and buildings and trees and signs and all that, and you have the location of all those from your sensors, from your cameras and your radar and your LiDAR, you can figure out where you are even more precisely than you can with GPS, and you can get down to 1 to 2 centimeter accuracy with HD maps versus with GPS. So there's a bunch of different companies coming up with different systems for HD maps to put into future vehicles, and actually they're starting to come out in some vehicles already now this year. One of the first systems that's coming out is a map system developed by Mobileye, who does a lot of the vision systems, the camera sensors that you find in various vehicles today. Nissan recently announced the version 2 of their ProPilot Assist system that's coming out this fall. That I've been learning more about in recent months, and that's the other one here. And this is using a system using ground penetrating radar.
Whoa, really? Wow.
One of the problems you have with surface level maps is things can change. Buildings can be torn down, new buildings go up, different features can move. Excuse me. And then, but with ground penetrating radar, and this is from a company called WaveSense, they actually have ground penetrating radar on the bottom of the vehicle that looks down about 5 to 10 feet under the surface.
Well, what do you get from that? How does that help you? I'm driving on the surface.
Right, well, but the thing is, underneath the surface, you've got a variety of features. You've got everything from tree roots, pipes, and...
Oh, so it's almost like a fingerprint. So you know exactly where you are based on that kind of fingerprint of what stuff's under there. Is that kind of the idea? So like, that tree root, that's interesting. So it's a way of locating yourself without GPS.
Fingerprint of what's underneath the surface. Excuse me, and allows you to locate.
Okay, no more burritos before the show. I'm just telling you. Especially with that hot sauce.
The ground penetrating radar generates a signature of what's underneath the road surface that never changes. And so you even on a dirt road with no markings or a snow-covered road, it works just great.
Wow! So this is the new sewer pipe navigation system that people talk. Yeah. Sewer pipes and tree roots. Wow, that's really interesting. Yeah, because if you've done the mapping, then you can recognize where you are. If you have the same kind of ground penetrating radar on both the mapping and the car, and I gather it's not expensive.
It's actually fairly inexpensive. It's only a couple of $100 to put that on the vehicle.
So let's talk about how GPS actually works. About 30 years ago, the United States military launched a number of satellites that circle the Earth at around 12,550 miles in the air. These satellites orbit the Earth and they circle twice a day. How does GPS work? Well, if you have an individual on the Earth and has a GPS device, it could be any of these devices up here. It could be a watch, it could be your Garmin or whatever. You'll have a GPS chip in it, and it requires the signal from 4 satellites. Now, what do these satellites send down as a signal to give your location? And what it is, it's a time signal. In other words, what is the time it would take for you to move from this location to this satellite? Now, if you can imagine, I'm sitting here in my house. If I walk to the end of the street, my GPS location would change. But you know, it wouldn't be that much difference in a time signal. I mean, that's pretty small difference in time. And you're right. And that's why to calculate this, you need an atomic clock. So what your GPS chip in your device is it's a radio receiver that receives a signal from the satellite as a time signal, and in the GPS chip there's an atomic clock. The atomic clock then takes the time signals from these 4 satellites and computes your latitude and longitude. So if you look at an early GPS system, you would need a room sort of like this with all this equipment. But today, with modern technology, this is a cell phone, and a GPS chip is this little device that sits right on the motherboard of the cell phone. And this is the chip that computes. And this is an atomic clock that is getting the signal from 4 satellites. And if you look at your cell phone, you'll see that there is a GPS antenna built into the side wall of your cell phone. And that's how we know where you're located with the GPS. Now, you'll see this is my cell phone. I have a little program on there called My GPS Coordinates. When I click on this, it gives me my latitude and longitude. This is important for security. So we really should be calling the satellite, we really should be calling GPS, the new terminology is called Global Navigation Satellite Systems, or GNSS. We've always called GPS, we always thought of GPS as a generic term for the satellites in the sky that tell us where we go. But in fact, that's not correct. GPS stands for Global Positioning Satellite, which is the term used by the US military satellites that are orbiting the Earth. But what you need to know is that there are other countries that have similar systems. China has its satellite system called Compass. Europe has its satellite system called Galileo. India is ARNES, Japan is QZSS, and Russia is GLONASS. Now, the United States over the past couple of years has actually replaced all their original satellites that were up there with a new system called GPS 3. So what does all this mean? Well, first of all, it's important to understand that the US system is a military system and can be, and there can be a difference in the accuracy as defined by how the US military programs it for the military versus civilian. In Europe, the Galileo system is a civilian system. It has nothing to do with the military, and the accuracy is actually, for civilians, it's turned up at a higher level. It's interesting, this past month, unfortunately, because of the software error, the European Galileo system went down, and it wasn't working for a month. But the GLONASS, or Russian system, stepped in and provided the signals for Galileo. So this shows us that these are all can be interconnected. So what does this mean for you? Well, we're going to be seeing some big changes coming. And I wanted you just to look down at the bottom right here and this picture of this watch. I took this off of Amazon a couple of weeks ago. This is a watch called a Amazfit Verge smartwatch made by a company called Huami. Now, look at what they describe. It has a GPS chip in it for location, but it also has GLONASS. You are going to be seeing in the next few years the GPS chips all changing, and they will be starting to come with either multiple chips or one chip that will be able to access multiple satellite systems from different countries depending on where you go. It may be that when you travel to Europe, the Galileo system traveling through Europe might be a better system to use than GPS. So we're going to be seeing lots of changes with this over the next few years. So what is the difference between Garmin and Google Maps? Well, if you look at on the left side, Garmin is a navigational aid that uses its GPS chip to ascertain your position. Just like I said, it has a GPS chip in it. The time sequence comes down from the satellites. The GPS chip has an atomic clock in it, and it computes your latitude and longitude. It then takes the latitude and longitude and uses it in its software to create a route for you. How's Google Maps different? Well, Google Maps, again, uses a GPS chip to ascertain your position, but it can be configured to either use streaming maps off the internet or resident maps on the device. Also, Google Maps is integrated into a network of services. I wanted just to show you an interesting route that I took. This is I took this in April as I was returning from Mesa, Arizona, to where I live, and we came up through. This is Las Vegas up to the left. This is Henderson. And I'm sure all of you who have traveled this area remember the last 10 years, the massive construction that has been all done, and it was involved in building this bypass. This is called the Boulder City Bypass. And now when you come out, you come around, you'll come down to this new highway, Highway 11, as you bypass Boulder City, and you'll come up into the Las Vegas this way. And this is an amazing highway. It's must have been billions of dollars to build. Now, I traveled this in April of this year, but the highway actually opened in August of last year. Now, as I was traveling, I traveled with another couple. They had a 2019 Honda Odyssey, and the fella that I'm traveling with is a very obsessive compulsive fella, and just before he left, he made sure his Honda Odyssey had updated maps. He also updated his Garmin 2 months earlier, and so he was set to go with his Honda Odyssey, updated maps, and his updated Garmin. When we left and we transited Highway 11, both the Odyssey and Garmin had no idea that Highway 11 existed. It was like we were driving over the mountains. However, on my Google Maps, not only did it have the the Highway 11 shown accurately, but it had the correct speed zones on the road here. So I think I'm going to say that Google Maps probably updates faster than other systems. Now, both the Garmin and Google Maps receive GPS from the same GPS chip and satellite. Your GPS location is, as I said, determined by an atomic clock receiving a radio transmission from GPS satellites. This is only a one-way transmission and not related to the internet. Garmin devices have their maps resident memory and must be updated manually when connected to the internet. Now, traffic information on Garmin's is received over an FM receiver. If you look at your Garmin and you look at the power cord and you see this dongle on the end as indicated by the red square, this is the FM receiver. You do not get updates over the satellite. A lot of misconception about that. They think it's all coming in through the satellite. The only signal you get from the satellite is that the time transmission. So when you're driving through Seattle and your Garmin says traffic ahead, it's coming through the FM radio receiver. This is different from Google Maps. If you can either use Google Maps online or offline, but the traffic reports come through an internet or data connection. What device can you use Google Maps on? And Google Maps is available on any device. Now, in preparation for this, we do have to think a little bit about distracted driving. Again, we want to know how these devices are used, and I think this is a bigger topic that we have to look at. But we'll talk about Android Auto and some of the ways that we're using Google Maps with voice technology to keep you safe on the road. Now, this is my 2007 truck. This is my, I don't own this fifth wheel anymore, but this is our trusty fifth wheel where we did all our traveling. So if you look at the cockpit of my truck, I wonder if you can identify the 4 navigation systems that I have. The first one is, of course, OnStar. OnStar is a GM proprietary navigation system. It's been around for a long time. It's still available. I found it worked okay. It's expensive. It's about $300 or $400 a year. This year, GM made a decision that the phone calling feature of the OnStar will not be available on any trucks, I think, after 2000, or any vehicles after 2020. The second one was the proprietary navigation system that GM put in the truck. I purchased that. I used that for the first couple of years, but it quickly got outdated and clunky, and I really sort of fell back to my Garmin. Which brings me up to the Garmin that you see sitting on my dash, and you're going to say, well, if I use Google Maps, why do I have the Garmin sitting there? Well, that Garmin actually is a backup camera. Garmin has an option, and I put a camera on the back of my truck, and this now functions as my backup camera. And of course, this is my current device I use, which is my phone, which I use with Google Maps. So how do you place this in a vehicle? And this is took me a lot of time to figure out where I was going to place it. And I decided that this is probably the best place for me to place it, and I placed it, as you can see, in a holder sitting here. Now, I've tried many different type of holders to stick on this stick in various locations in the cab, and I went through about half a dozen before I found this particular one. And this is made by a company called APCUG, and it has actually a washable gel pad that sits on the back here, and it sticks like glue. I made a mistake, and when I first put it on, and I stuck it on this side, but it didn't work well because it interfered with the steering column, so I tried to move it over here, and it just is a bear to get off of there. So this has never moved since I stuck it on 5 months ago, even though it sat in hot Mesa weather. So this is a device, it's $12, you can buy it on Amazon. This is my favorite device for holding my phone. The second device that I use is one of the things that you'll do is if you have an older vehicle, you'll want to have the sound of your phone run into your into the central audio of your car, because as you're driving, it's hard to hear the tiny speaker in your cell phone. This is an excellent device. This is made again by the same company called APCUG, and this is a Bluetooth receiver. This is a rechargeable device. It's only 20 bucks. It plugs into the audio input port of your entertainment system, and it connects to my phone automatically when I get in the car. Now, of course, if you have a modern vehicle, one that you've purchased recently, a lot of this is already on your vehicle. But if you don't, this is a great device. Even though it's chargeable, I only have to charge it up about once a month. So when I come into the car and I connect this, it connects it through Bluetooth right into my system. Now, the other thing that you'll notice is that is the battery life and plug-in. The first thing when I started using Google Maps, this is a Pixel 3 phone. It's a relatively, well, it was new in November of last year. The first thing I noticed when I started using Google Maps with this phone in the car was I got about 4 or 5 hours out of it, and that was it. So if you are going to use Google Maps in the car and you are going to be doing them online, I would strongly recommend you plug it in, because you will not have enough battery power in your phone if you're going to drive, say 8 or 10 hours. So you're going to need some power. All right, which to choose? With Google Maps, you really have a choice of whether you want to use online or offline maps. And this is a fundamental decision that you have to make to try and decide what you want to use. And let me just talk a little bit about the choices and making those choices. One of the things that Google Maps Offline is an incredibly powerful program. Whether you are going to use it driving, you can use Google Maps Offline for traveling, even if you're traveling to different parts of the world and not driving. It's such an important part and cool part of Google Maps. This is where you can actually take the map and you can download it as a resident map onto your phone. And how do you do this? Well, let's say, for example, you wanted to visit the San Francisco Bay Area. So what you would do is you would go onto Google Maps and you would choose the offline version, and then you would bring up the area that you wanted to go, and you sort of draw the outline on Google Maps and choose an area. Now, in the offline maps, I can choose all of Arizona. The amount of data that you can download is really dependent on the size of memory in your phone and the memory available. Google Maps figures all that out for you. So in an area like San Francisco, which is very highly dense with a lot of data, I think that you probably won't be able to get much more of an area than this. But if you went like to Arizona, you could probably, I can do the whole state. So once you choose the area, you say you want to name the offline area. Let's say it's San Francisco Bay Area, and you say save, and this is then going to download the map onto your cell phone. So now you will have the map of this whole area, which includes all the roadways, most of the points of interest, tremendous amount of data that you'll now have on your phone. But if you wanted to travel to Beijing, Sydney, Australia, wherever you want to go, this works all over the world, and you can free of charge download these maps onto onto your phone. Now, so there we have it. We have offline maps, and here are some of the maps that I have on my phone. Now you'll see that the map of Comox, which is my area here, it says these maps expire after 3 months. So it tells me that this map is going to expire on June the 4th unless updated. So if you click these 3 little dot menus here, you can update it. And when you click the update, it will update the map for you. Also, if you go to settings up here, you can also choose to automatically update offline maps. And also I have it set to automatically download them as well. So this is a cool way that you can actually have your maps resident on your phone. So if you decide to use the online, why would you decide to use the online maps? Well, of course, there are a lot more features with the online maps because you're going to be connected. You are now connected to the internet through your data plan, and you are going to be downloading these maps as a streaming fashion as you drive. So the first question that I asked is, how much data is this Google Maps going to use online? Well, how much is this going to chew up? What type of data? Because you're going to be using your cellular data plan. So I did a little study to try and figure this out. Now, things to consider, all right? Data is based on time, not distance traveled. There's probably some location dependence, because if you travel in an urban area, you may find that your cellular data can be hotspotted. I have a Pixel 3, and I use a data plan called Google Fi, which is Google's system, and they have a series of Wi-Fi systems set up across the United States that switches from cellular data to Wi-Fi as you're driving. So this may be understated. My figures may be a little understated. Do you have an unlimited data plan? And then the other question would be, if you want to travel across on a 10-day road trip across the United States, how much data might you use? So here's my data analysis story. I bought my Pixel 3 in November. So here's my plan. In January, I used 0.7 gigabytes. In February, I used 0.4 gig. Now, this is at my home in Mesa with no travel, leaving my phone on all the time on cellular data. So in January, I used 0.7, February 0.4, March 0.9, and May 0.8. Now, I took an average of that, and I said it's 0.7 per month. So I'm using 0.7 gigabytes per month, just my average use. Now, in April, I transited from Mesa to Comox, and I went 1,700 miles, or 4.5 days, or 45 hours of driving. Now, I used in April 3.6 gigabytes. So I'm going to say if you take 0.7 from 3.6, let's say it's roughly 3 gigabytes. And if you divide this out with 4.5 days, you'll see it comes to 0.7 gigabytes per day. So if you were going on a driving holiday and you were going to drive for 10 days and 10 hours, and Google Maps would use 0.7 gigabytes per day, you would need 7 gigabytes for your trip. So this is could be problematic if you have a data plan that only uses 2 gigabytes per month. So you have to consider your data plan because Google Maps Online does use data. And so it is important that you consider that your data plan when you're traveling. All right, starting Google Maps. To start it, you bring up Google Maps app, you show your current location, and I'll show you this in a minute. You can start navigation by using your voice, and your destination can come from a calendar or email. And let me just show you this here. So this is when you bring up Google Maps on your cell phone, and it will give you a bunch of choices. It knows by your It's just smart. It's just really smart. It knows really where you want to go. It looks in your calendar, it looks in your email, and it'll give you a bunch of choices of where you think you're going to go. And so I've decided that I'm going to go and visit my friends at this location. So I click on this, and then it gives me the route to get to my location. And it tells me that it's going to be 2 hours and 5 minutes. So I hit the navigate button, and now off we go. And it's going to give me turn-by-turn navigation to the location I want to go. If I click this little button here, it'll give me alternate routes. Now, on the Pixel 3 phone, since it's a Google phone, as soon as my car starts to move, the Android Auto switches in, and the navigation menu is different. This now looks different because Android Auto is a software program that is you can download it. If you don't have it on your phone, you can download it as an app, but it comes on all Pixel phones, and it allows for complete hands-free navigation while you're using Google Maps. So it looks a bit different once you get going. Now, the next thing that happens is one of the options when you start your trip is, do you want to share your trip progress? So, for example, if we are going down to visit our friends might want to know when we're going to arrive. Well, you can share your trip progress with any number of people. So you could simply click this as Doug and Louise, who we're going to see. I just click on this, and they'll get an email with a link, and they'll be able to see our progress as we travel down the island to their house, and we're going to visit them. They can see it exactly as we travel along. This has enormous safety potential as well. If you have grandparents that are, or you have loved ones that are traveling from one destination to you, this is a very nice way of being able to track and see exactly where they are, and if they get into trouble, you can help them. You can also share your location with multiple people. If you're having a picnic in the afternoon and you have a bunch of people coming, you can share your location with multiple people, and they all can share their locations with you. So you'll be able to see where everybody is, as it evidenced in this diagram here. So you can share your situation with multiple people. And again, Android Auto is if you're purchasing a new car, you'll likely find in the navigation system Android Auto is there, and it will usually have your Google Maps as the default. Now, while you're traveling, how to avoid tolls? Well, no one likes to pay money for tolls. So you can set up Android, or you can set up Google Maps so that it will detour you and take you around so you do not have to pay for tolls. Now, this was sort of cool. Google Maps now offers speed limit warnings with radar locations. And I have to tell you that when I left Mesa and I was traveling north to Kingman, we went through in half an hour, no, probably 3/4 of an hour, no less than 4 radar speed traps. In all 4 cases, Google Maps correctly identified where they were and notified me that they were ahead. Not that I speed, because I told you I had a perfect driving record, but this certainly helps keep you from getting tickets. If you do see a speeding ticket, a speed strap, you can, or a crash, you actually can, in Google Maps, you can click on one of these 2 buttons, and that notifies everybody in the area. Google Maps is now getting an on-screen speedometer. One of the things that one of the complaints people had about Google Maps is it didn't tell you what your current speed was. There is a third-party app that you can add onto your Google Maps that does that, but you won't need that now because Google Maps is getting an on-speed speedometer. Parking locations. So once you park your car, you decide you're going to go and have some lunch, and you're in a big parkade. You come back and you can't find your car. There's an option in Google Maps to save your parking location, which will allow you to get back and find your car. I didn't want to get into all the other factors with Google Maps, but Google Maps is so smart now, is it can predict transportation needs for you. So it can tell you, example here is it tells you the traffic situation of the bus and giving you alternate things to consider, such as Uber and Lyft, all available on Google Maps. A new feature that's been added is SOS alerts. These are alerts for hurricanes, which will attempt to map the routes, flooding alerts, and earthquake alerts. These are all alerts that will come through on your Google Maps. Again, you have to use the online version to have these activated. It also finds your charging stations. So if you have an electric car, Google Maps will find your charging stations. There is a timeline, and once a month you'll get a list of all your routes that you've traveled, as it keeps a timeline of all the routes that you've traveled when you're using Google Maps. A new feature which is coming, again, this is not particularly pertaining to driving, but this is not available yet in North America, but this is a very, very cool feature. What happens here is how many of you got in a taxi cab and you felt the taxi cab didn't take you to the most direct route to your hotel? Well, what happens with this is you can actually put the route to the hotel in Google Maps, and it will let you know if the taxi diverts more than 500 meters off the most direct route to the hotel. This is going to be a really cool feature in Google Maps, but it's not available yet in North America. Google Maps adds over 45, and if you travel to India, they just added 4,500 toilets, which you might need if you plan on going to India, added 4,500 toilets into Google Maps. So if you're in India and you need to go to the loo, you'll be able to find out where it is. And last but not least, if you want to participate in Google Maps and you want to add some of your holidays or some of your treks, you can actually get from Google Maps devices like this one here, which you can strap on your back, and you can travel, you can record your travels for Google Maps. This is sort of an interesting thing if you're really ambitious. Well, I think that's just about the time we have. I think I've left a little time for questions, and I'll hopefully
Ron, you there?
Yep.
Oh, okay. Okay, I thought I'd unmuted you, but I didn't. Okay. That was a very interesting presentation. Thank you, Ron. We do have, it appears, one long question.
One long question?
Well, I think it's about 3 or 4 questions in one chat here.
Okay.
Okay. Someone wanted to know the phone manufacturer of the Pixel confirmed that it's an Android, and they want to know your carrier. You don't got to say the carrier if you don't want to. Well,
I sort of indicate that. So the Pixel phone is made. I'm not sure who actually, but it's Google the Pixel phone is a very popular phone in the United States. I forget if it's quite up there. And it's a Google phone. It's made by Google. The carrier that I use is Google Fi. Google Fi is called an MNVO, which is a mobile network virtual operator, and it works on the back of T-Mobile, US Cellular, and Sprint. And it's a very popular service. I love it. I think it's great, and and that's called Google Fi, and that's again run by Google. I'm sort of a Google guy.
Okay, okay, and it's scrolling down here. I gotta watch what I'm saying. How can one turn off previous location history and calendar to ensure privacy?
Sorry, what was the question again?
Okay, how does one turn off previous location history and calendar, I guess, to ensure privacy?
Previous location history to ensure privacy. That's sort of a difficult question because it's more of a global. I mean, if you're concerned about privacy, you probably shouldn't be using Google online. Google Maps online. I mean, it is. If you're going to be using it online, it definitely is going to be tracking your route. So I don't know how else you would do that.
No, I think what she meant was once you finish what you're doing, because you said it stays in your phone. Well, it stays on, gives you travel history, but I'm assuming that's come from the cloud and not from your phone, right?
That's correct.
Okay,
I don't know. I'm not sure if there's the timeline. I'm not sure if you can turn the timeline off. I don't know the answer to that. I'd have to look that up.
Okay. Well, if you don't want to know anybody where you're going, just turn off your GPS and forget about it.
Yeah, sure.
Okay. And now we got a minute or two, and because I actually like the questions. Well, I got two. It says, please compare and contrast Google Maps to Waze and other navigators.
I knew that was going to come up as a question. A lot of people use Waze. Waze, of course, is owned by Google. It's very similar to Google Maps, except Waze has more accurate road conditions. It's updated continually through crowdsourcing. In other words, as people drive along with Waze, they're constantly inputting traffic and accidents and so on and so forth into their phones, and this all is pooled into a database and rebroadcast. And it works extremely well for areas that are highly density, like Los Angeles or any of the large cities, because there's so many people putting data in that you get extremely accurate traffic reports. Now, you do get traffic reports with Google Maps, but it's not as probably up to date, I think, as probably Waze. A lot of the features of Waze are now being incorporated into Google Maps. I think that Google Maps probably from an integration is integrated more into the Google ecosystem than Waze is. As I said, Google Maps will pick up on your destination. It looks in your calendar. It looks in your email to pick up the destinations that you might want to go. So when you get in the car, it gives you the choices. When you get into the car, it says, well, look, here's where do you want to go? And it gives you your options, and it sort of usually is right. And it gets that through the Google ecosystem, which I don't think probably Waze would do as well with that.
Okay. How well does offline maps work with the extended SSD cards?
I think it works fine. You can put Google. I would think you could put the file wherever you want. You don't have really a big choice in that, because Google Maps will choose how much data it sort of is going to look at your hard drive, and it's going to figure out how much you can download. So you don't really have a choice in it. It's going to tell you what it feels the maximum size you can download. But it's pretty good. I mean, I can do all of Arizona on one map,